Okay, so we're getting the first row of lights here dimmed. Let me just share with. Oh, great, that's great. That we do have Dinosaurs available, the books at least, on the back table there, and that kids and grandkids love to read about missionary lizards or the dinosaurs. So here's the book here. You will enjoy reading this to your kids and grandkids. Also, I have a book on animals, and I think I mentioned dinosaurs in this book as well. So you've got these two. And speaking of little ones, we have a little book on dinosaurs as well for the young people. And so they can be introduced to dinosaurs, not an evolutionary, but a creation perspective. So dinosaurs here. All right, and then finally, Dr. Brian Thomas has Uncovering the Truth About Dinosaurs, a DVD series. You will thoroughly enjoy this DVD series. I think it's in 20-minute to maybe a half-hour bites or segments, and it's up to the very, very recent regarding dinosaur research and all. Okay, so let's talk about dinosaurs here this morning, just the time that we have it this afternoon, I should say. 5 facts that we should know about dinosaurs, and I'll go through this very, very quickly, not too quickly, but in order to show you that we love dinosaurs at ICR. As I say, we call them missionary lizards. So we look at the Bible as being the real origins account, written by someone who was there in the beginning, who told us what happened in the first critical opening chapters of Genesis. Now, we all have the same physical data, don't we? When it comes to, for example, the fossil record. And as I'd mentioned earlier, enjoy the fossils, because the fossil record is either going to support the creation model of the flood, or it's going to support a slow, gradual evolutionary process spanning quite literally a 500 million years. So I choose the former, okay? I think that the biblical record of interpreting the fossil record is the way to go. And so we all have the same physical data. Now, the reason I show a clam there is because when you have the person sitting next to you and blindfold them and have that person choose 100 fossils. Give them a big old sack and choose 100 fossils completely random. They are blindfolded. They can't see. They're just grabbing fossils here and there, trying to do a good cross-section of the fossil record. Statistically, over 90 of all those 100 fossils that that person chooses will be marine invertebrates. What's another way of saying marine invertebrates? Answer? Clams, okay? And so what is a fossil record really a record of? This will be surprising. It's not a record of dinosaurs. It's not a record of, for example, a fish. It's a record of clams. The fossil record shows clams at the bottom, clams in the middle of the fossil record in the geologic column, and clams at the top of the fossil record, and clams from side to side. It's just lots of clams, just a whole bunch of clams. Lots and lots of clams. Just clams. That's all it is. And so that's why I put the physical data there. At least 95% of all animal fossils are marine invertebrates or clams. Among the vertebrates, most fossils are fish, and that we're talking about the remaining 5% are fish. Again, mostly marine creatures. Of the terrestrial fossils, by far, most are plants. Land-dwelling animals, such as mammals and what we're talking about this afternoon, dinosaurs, are poorly represented in the fossil record. That's the take-home point. That's point number 1, if you will, about dinosaurs. They are poorly represented in the fossil record. So we have 2 interpretations because we have 2 conflicting worldviews. One is interpretation A, that this clam evolved over time from a non-clam ancestor. And so that's a pretty good trick. I would like to know what a non-clam ancestor is and how such a creature, if it ever existed, I'm a skeptic, I don't believe it ever existed, how a non-clam ancestor would turn into a clam that is so populating the fossil record. Secondly, the second interpretation is this clam died in Noah's flood. It descended from originally created clams, and those are the choices. But when it comes to asking an evolutionist, you can do it diplomatically. You don't want to get an argument, but diplomatically say, I need to know where clams came from. What was the origin of clams? How do they evolve from a non-clam ancestor? And I've never gotten a satisfactory result from that, an answer. So here's fact number 1, if we're taking notes. Dinosaurs have always been what? Dinosaurs. Very profound statement. Just like people have always been people, dinosaurs have always been dinosaurs. They first appear fully formed and suddenly. That is a key feature of the fossil record. When we do find fossils of dinosaurs in the fossil record, they are fully formed, 100% dinosaurs. They're not on their way to becoming dinosaurs. They are, boom, right there in the fossil record, 100% dinosaurs. In the upper Triassic layers, we don't believe in those millions of years, but we're just looking at from a specific area that the evolutionists talk about. It's the upper Triassic, where they were buried by the flood approximately 4,500 years ago. And so this is what we find when it comes to the fossil record of dinosaurs. They show up suddenly, completely formed as dinosaurs. Now, on the days of creation, on what day were dinosaurs created? I love to ask this question. Last year, a little boy sitting in the front row goes, Thursday. But on what was the day of creation when it comes to God having created dinosaurs? Day, a little bit of hesitancy, 5. It'd be day 6. And so dinosaurs and people, by the way, were both created on day 6. And we believe the days of creation were literal 24-hour periods of time. God is not the author of confusion. He wants us to understand that he created in 6 literal 24-hour days. There's no huge break of time between each day. Scripture simply does not say that. And so dinosaurs are created on day 6 along with people. Well, wait a minute. Why aren't dinosaurs and people buried together in the fossil record? Well, the answer is we don't believe we would find them buried together because they did not live together. They occupy different ecological zones, different ecological areas. And so if they lived in different ecological areas, we would not expect them to be found buried together. But I am praying that someday they'll uncover a Tyrannosaurus rex fossil and it has a human skeleton in the jaws of the T-Rex. Wouldn't that be neat? Okay. It would show that dinosaurs and people were living together and eating together. And that this whole idea of dinosaurs evolving from a non-dinosaur ancestor and then millions of years later people began to evolve just doesn't work. So yes, day 6, and God made the beast of the earth after his kind, the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and God saw that it was good. Genesis 1 and verse 25. So God created dinosaurs. What do you suppose you call these These, by the way, are my favorite group of dinosaurs. They're called sauropods. Sauropods are dinosaurs that have a long neck and a long tail, and they were big. Almost 60 tons of steaks and roast. So they were a very large group of dinosaurs, like the Apatosaurus, as you see there, Diplodocus, Camarasaurus. These are big, big dinosaurs. Now, when I was growing up, I grew up in a non-Christian family. I seemed to get the idea that, wow, dinosaurs got really big. Evolution must be true. That was my kind of reasoning. You know, the real big dinosaurs mean that evolution is true, and that simply doesn't make any sense there. So again, these are called sauropods. Sauropods, and as far as can be determined, they were plant eaters. They were herbivorous. And so here's an African elephant you see at the bottom of the screen there, and you can't see the silhouette of a 6-foot man in front of the elephant there, but it gives you an appreciation as to how really big these dinosaurs were. Did they spend most of their time in a swampy area where they were kind of buoyed up by the water? Well, we can't tell for sure. There's only so many things that you can tell about a fossil just by looking at it, and so you can only make, in some respects, educated guesses. But these are the sauropods, and my friend, if I can use that word, Michael Benton, the evolutionist out of England, who wrote the book on vertebrate paleontology, said in 2015, the 4th edition, and I quote, sauropod, and he's talking about these creatures right here, sauropod phylogeny. That means evolution. When you see that word phylogeny, it means evolution. Sauropod evolution has been much what, class? It's been much debated. Well, I agree, yeah. Yeah, if you try and explain that all these unique kinds of dinosaurs that you see have evolved, then of course it's always going to be much debated because the fossil record simply does not document that. It doesn't show that. It shows that dinosaurs have always been dinosaurs. Thank you. Dinosaurs have always been dinosaurs, and their phylogeny is non-existent because evolution isn't true. Argentinian saurus. Where do you suppose they found Argentinian saurus? No, New Mexico. And so, right, Argentinian saurus. They found in Argentina. As a matter of fact, the largest dinosaurs they think have ever been seen or found have been Argentinian saurus in Argentina. That's just the way that they have been buried in the Genesis flood. And so back in 2007, a long time ago, they found a 105-foot dinosaur fossil in Patagonia, Argentina. 100 tons, they estimate. Boy, that's a lot of dinosaurs, okay? Now, here's the big question in the afternoon. Wait a minute, ICR says that dinosaurs went on board the ark. What's this 100-ton dinosaur going on board the ark? Is that what we're saying? No, shake your head like this. We're saying the young pups, the juveniles, the young dinosaurs went on Noah's Ark, and it could even be the eggs, right? Yeah, they could have taken eggs on board the ark. It's hard to tell, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the bigger dinosaur, then they went on the ark as well. It would tip over. And so I hate it when that happens, but it's the juvenile dinosaur. Okay, class, question, what's this? Help me out. Oh, how soon we forget. Bing, 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 bing. Stegosaurus in the front row. A for the afternoon. Thank you, folks. This is a Stegosaurus, okay? See those plates on the back? Do we know that that's how the plates were arrayed on the Stegosaurus? We don't know. I've been to a Stegosaurus dig in Colorado, and we found the plates, but they're just kind of willy-nilly around the fossil itself. And so I have to say it. In this case, we just have to use our imagination and say, how were these plates arrayed or stuck, if you will, on the dinosaur? We won't know this side of heaven. But these plates are always associated with the Stegosaurus. And so could it be for sexual display? Could it be for a radiation of excess heat? Yeah, we just can't tell. But I will tell you that the Stegosaurus mandible, the jaw containing the teeth, are tiny, tiny teeth. It's unbelievable how tiny the teeth on the Stegosaurus is. Very tiny. And yet it was an eating machine. It had to be in order to metabolize all of the cells and the protoplasm and the tissue aft of the mouth there. So it would just have to be a nonstop eating machine. So here's some Stegosaurus cats. Somebody had too much time on their hands. I'm a cat lover. I love cats, and so Stegosaurus. See, evolution is true. How about this? Triceratops. Very good. Triceratops. All right, and tri means three. Three horns there. See how easy science is? Science is easy. All right. T-Rex. Yeah, T-Rex. Look at this. And let's look at the anatomy there. Tyrannosaurus Rex. Notice the short arms, the extended tail, that savage look. Ooh. We have an animatronic T-Rex in Dallas at the Discovery Center, ICR's Discovery Center. So another reason why you must come and visit us, all right? You come and visit us. Let me know that you're there. Say, hi, this is George from Iowa, and we'll go out to eat. I'll pray, you pay. Okay. But anyway, notice the short arms, the extended tail, that savage look. Oh, boy, by the way, this is what evolutionists say birds came from. Yeah, a theropod dinosaur. Tyrannosaurus rex is a theropod dinosaur. And so this is what birds came from. It's evolutionary ancestor of birds. I can't see that. I mentioned earlier that I have a fertile imagination, but I cannot see how, a bird like a majestic eagle can come from something like that. Anyway, I'm an evolutionary skeptic. Isn't it cool to be a skeptic these days, especially a high schooler? Boy, they like to say they're skeptics. Well, I'm a skeptic when it comes to evolution. So notice that extended tail, savage look. Oh boy, here's Dogosaurus rex. Notice the short arms, the extended tail, savage look of the little puppy. Who's a good boy? All right. And so we can have fun, can't we? Shake your yes. Okay. And so let's look at the dinosaur origin. Norman, a guy by the name of Norman, way back in, last year, writing for the Department of Earth Sciences in England, in Cambridge, said that it was as if they just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the most exquisite, pointed definition of where dinosaurs came from. This guy has no biblical axe to grind. He is totally secular in his worldview. And yet he is refreshing in stating, again, that it's if dinosaurs just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. I'm going, yes, because they were created thousands of years ago on day 6 of creation. And so no wonder evolutionists say this. By the way, I salute Dr. Norman out of Cambridge for being intellectually honest. Isn't he? Yeah, and saying that, boy, they just appear out of nowhere. And I'm going, that's exactly what the creation model is all about. Oops, excuse me. Oh, no. Good. Okay, continuing on, dinosaur origin. Now the focus has shifted on how they died out, look at this, to where they came from in the first place. This is a little bit of a few years ago. They say dinosaurs coexisted with their reptilian forebears rather than replacing them. Well, if you coexist with your supposed reptilian forebears, then it's a cinch that those reptilian forebears didn't give rise to the first dinosaurs. They appear suddenly in the same layer of sediments, okay? So one could not possibly have evolved into the other. They both were living at the same time. And so new fossil find in Brazil rewrites the history of dinosaurs, 2016. This individual is an anatomist and an individual who studies fossils at Johns Hopkins University, hardly a biblical university. He's a lead editor of the Dinosauria, and he said, and I quote, "From my reading of the fossil record of dinosaurs," okay, good, he's a paleontologist, he studies fossils. "From my reading of the fossil record of dinosaurs, no direct ancestors have been discovered for any dinosaur species." Notice that word, any. All dinosaurs show up complete, suddenly, and fully formed. Alas, my list of dinosaurian ancestors is an empty one. Again, I salute him for being intellectually honest, and of course, we're getting a lot of mileage out of this because we would maintain God created dinosaurs as according to the biblical. Why do I keep doing that? Okay, so fact number 1 was what? How soon we forget. Dinosaurs have always been dinosaurs. Fact number 2, here we go. Dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark. I was in California about 8 years ago, I'll say 8 years ago, and a pastor asked me to speak at his church. And as I was getting ready to talk on dinosaurs, he said, "One thing I know for sure, Frank, and that is dinosaurs never went on Noah's Ark." And that was like 3 minutes before I gave this presentation. Okay, but anyway, yeah, we have to go with what Scripture says, right? Yeah. Dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark. And so let's go ahead and take an area in Iowa right here. In Iowa, look at a typical, let's take the dimensions of Noah's Ark. So 450 feet long, 75 foot wide, 45 foot high. Let's connect the dots. And so this is how big Noah's Ark was in your typical neighborhood, and the neighbors would be pretty upset. But anyway, and so we have Noah's Ark there. Oh, did I tell you how much I love this thing? And so here's Noah's Ark, and how many decks in Noah's Ark? There we go. 3 decks of Noah's Ark. And so the Ark had space equal to about 522 cattle stock cars. So plenty of room for the representative animals as we discuss as God describes in the book of Genesis. So Genesis 6:19 says, "And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark." That includes the dinosaurs, right? That includes the sauropods, long neck, long tail, but they were the juveniles there. So did the 100-ton sauropod go on board? No, good. No, they did not. And here they are. Here are the juvenile sauropods. These are sauropods, but they're very, very young. They just hatch out of the egg. Could they not have gone on board the ark? I think so. I think so. And here's some more, having some fun around mom as they get older. Is there evidence? That's the key. Are there evidence that these creatures are on Noah's Ark? And the answer is 100% yes. This picture was taken by Shem or Japheth, I forget which one. And he took the picture there showing indeed that we have dinosaurs on board Noah's Ark. Case closed. Okay, fact number 3. Fact number 3, dinosaurs are recent. And boy, there is a lot of evidence for this, a lot. And I'm going to have to kind of zip through it very quickly, but you can get the dinosaur books that we have on the back table there. This comes from the World Book Encyclopedia, 1973. I was off the coast of Vietnam on an aircraft carrier when this came out. The dinosaurs of legend are strangely like actual creatures that have lived in the past. This is a secular encyclopedia, folks. A secular encyclopedia. They are much like giant reptiles which inhabited the earth long before man is supposed to have appeared on earth. And so this is what we're saying in the 21st century, that quite possibly dinosaurs and dragons were the same thing. So when you say dinosaurs, it's probably dragons and versa versa. So that the two, we believe, are the same thing. And so this, when we hear stories about medieval dragons and St. George and the dragon and all that, we believe that they were battling dinosaurs, which came off the ark after the Genesis flood approximately 4,500 years ago. So if dinosaurs went on the ark, they came off the ark after the flood, and then they migrated. Do animals migrate? Yeah, virtually all the animals. I'm a zoologist. I don't know any animal species that is unable to migrate. They all have the ability to migrate. That includes dinosaurs. That after the flood, they came off the ark and began to migrate throughout Europe. The Chinese revere the dragon. Dinosaurs. The dragon, okay? And there's also, they have celebrations and all that with the dragons. And we would look at that and say, yeah, those are dinosaurs that survived the flood and came off and migrated and reproduced, not in the great numbers that we see in the pre-flood fossil record, but yeah, dragons are dinosaurs. And this is a cover of National Geographic magazine, no friend of the creationists. They do not like creationists, about the nicest thing I can say. But they have on the cover, big, bad, bizarre dinosaurs. And what does that look like? What's the cover there? It looks like a dragon, doesn't it? Yeah, and yet it's a big, bad, bizarre dinosaur that looks just like a dragon. Nine-dragon wall in China. China is renowned for its dragon, or if you will, dinosaur stories. And dragons are prominent in Chinese pottery, embroidery, and carvings. And so these are some of the quote-unquote dragons, or we would say dinosaurs. They're in China, and the China history is just absolutely replete with all sorts of dragon stories. This is carved in a Cambodian temple about 9 centuries ago. What does that look like, class? Look at that. Those are those plates I was talking about earlier. It looks like a Stegosaurus, okay? Now, 9 centuries ago, did they have paleontologists who were able to look at fossils and say, all right, let's go ahead and put flesh and muscle on this thing, and this is what? No. They didn't have any paleontologists 9 centuries ago, and yet this Ta Prohm is what it's called, abounds with stone statues and reliefs. Almost every square inch of the gray sandstone is covered with ornate carvings. Hundreds of decorative stone circles surround familiar animals, such as monkeys, deer, water buffaloes, parrots, and dinosaurs. In other words, when they were making these carvings in the sandstone, a parrot, I'll put a parrot in there. Oh, look at that, a buffalo, I'll put in a water buffalo. And look at that, stegosaurus, I'll put in stegosaurus. Okay, that seems to be what it's all about there. Is this a salamander here, or is this a dinosaur? Okay, I don't know any salamanders that breathe fire. I'm a zoologist, okay? I've just never encountered something like that. So is this a salamander? And so this comes from France, from a relief in France, in a castle there. So there on the castle wall, they have this, and their coat of arms. And, if I was rich and I wanted to strike fear in the heart of my enemy, I wouldn't put a slimy salamander on my shield. I'd put something that would really scare them, and something really big, like, I don't know, maybe a dragon or dinosaur or something. Yeah, Frank, look at that. It's breathing fire. That's ridiculous. That shows how unscientific the Bible is, because the Bible does talk about fire-breathing animals, right? Oceanic animals. Oops. Well, okay, that wraps it up for me. Pastor, I'll have you come up. No. Wait, there is an answer to that, okay? 15 years ago, I was in Southern California. My friend Mark Armitage, who is an electron microscopist who studies electron pictures, microscope pictures, and he's a parasitologist as myself. And so he said, Frank, reach into this big glass bowl he had there. He had debris and twigs and all sorts of leaves and all that. He said, reach in there and get one of those. And so I reached in there, and I pulled out a beetle. And I'm an invertebrate zoologist. I like beetles. So I was holding that beetle, and then I knew what it was. And so I took my finger. This is what we call it in Texas. Finger. And I put my finger up to the back of that beetle, and boom, an explosion. 212 degrees Fahrenheit came out from the back of that beetle. It was what we call a bombardier beetle, you bet. And I always wanted to do that because by that time I was a creation speaker, and I wanted to tell audiences, such as my dear friends here in Iowa, that I actually held a bombardier beetle in my fingers, and it exploded against my fingertip, and it hurt because it was a boiling point of water. And then it begins to oxidize, and it's really gross, yucky, yellow exudate as it oxidizes there. And it's due to two compounds that I'm familiar with. One is inorganic. It's hydrogen peroxide, about 22% concentration. The kind you get at Walgreens is only 3% concentration. Remember when you would get a boo-boo, I think a strawberry in your skin, and your mom would pour that hydrogen peroxide there? Only 3%. And it hurts, right? Well, the bombardier beetle puts out hydrogen peroxide about 22%. If you poured that on that little boo-boo, it would bubble and fizz the skin, the muscle, and nerves, and you would have nice, white, shiny bone. And as we say at ICR, please don't try that at home. Okay? But it's called the bombardier beetle, and this is what it looks like. This is a bit of glue here. See that yellow stuff there? That's glue, and this is an aluminum wire going down to the glue that holds the bombardier beetle in place. What is this? Well, this is a pair of forceps or tweezers, and the zoologist is taking a pair of forceps or tweezers and pulling on the leg of that poor bombardier beetle. How naughty. Well, the beetle's getting mad, right? And he's swinging his rear end around, boom! An explosion, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, boiling point of water, a combination of hydrogen peroxide, hydroquinone, plus very important enzymes as well. So the gland that produces hydroquinone, that's an organic compound, has a benzene ring, unlike hydrogen peroxide, which is inorganic, just H2O2, and extra oxygen on a water molecule. Here's a storage tank, quote unquote. This is a gland that produces special catalysts called biological catalysts or enzymes. You've heard of enzymes, right? The reason why you're digesting your lunch right now is because of enzymes. They're enzymatically breaking your food down, getting energy from it. And there's the explosion chamber, and then there's 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So my point is this afternoon that if God can put all of this biochemical machinery inside that little beetle, just a little beetle, all that biochemical machinery that gives an explosion at the boiling point of water many times per second. And you can actually hear it. It's fascinating. And the neat thing about it is bombardier beetles are ubiquitous. They're here in Iowa if you know where to look. But if God can put all of that inside of a bombardier beetle, could he not put it inside this creature here? Shake your head like this. Yeah. The bombardier beetle's defense mechanism, strongly exothermic. That just means it produces a lot of heat. Boiling hot fluids and explosive release. And we say dinosaurs are recent because, well, we have soft dinosaur tissue. If you're taking notes, please write down 3 words. Soft dinosaur tissue, and then look that up in Google Images. I was being interviewed by a Christian radio station, and the guy was kind of skeptical about a literal creation. You could tell he kind of gave into a little bit to the theistic evolution, but I was talking to him. We had a great conversation. I was on the phone, and he was neat as a host. He kept the ball rolling, and I said to him at one point, because I knew he had a computer screen right there in the studio. You know, you can have a computer and you can look stuff up. And so I said, go ahead and type in soft dinosaur tissue on Google Images. And then I continued answering his question. And all of a sudden, he freaked out right there on the air. He was shouting. He said, this is incredible. I've never, and he was talking about the pictures that you saw there. I'd never seen this. It's a soft dinosaur tissue. And then that gave me an opportunity to share with him that you don't get soft dinosaur tissue lasting for even 500,000 years, let alone 66 plus million years. Soft tissue simply doesn't last that long. Even if you tried as best you could to preserve it, it simply does not last that long. It's not only soft dinosaur tissue, but soft tissue of other creatures that supposedly became extinct in the fossil record over many millions of years. 100-million-year-old soft tissue. There's something wrong with the timing. There's something wrong with those vast evolutionary ages. I call them Darwin ages because they don't really exist. Darwin years. This comes from ICR, Dr. Brian Thomas, that we have the dinosaurs such as a variety of Allosaurus, Hadrosaurus, Apatosaurus, and so forth, and the lab method, and I won't go into any of these, but just to show that we find it in where else? Texas, Colorado, just, Montana, these upper Triassic areas that these dinosaurs laid down during the Genesis flood. And I think we saw this earlier this morning, didn't we? The paleontologists, those who study fossils, found chromatin threads in fossilized dinosaur cartilage. And so I emphasize that it's preliminary data and may still be preserved. I understand that, but look at this. This looks pretty compelling. This is very, very exciting results. And if it truly is dinosaur DNA, that's simply another nail in the coffin of these vast evolutionary ages. You just can't have soft dinosaur tissue, and doubly so for DNA. DNA, in biology, we call it friable. Friable, not that you would fry it, but friable is a way of saying scientifically that it's easily fractured. It's easily broken up. In other words, it's very delicate. And the DNA molecule is very delicate. It's held together by hydrogen bonds, and I won't go into it, but you're just not going to get DNA lasting that long. Canada unveils dinosaur mummy, a mummy of a 100% dinosaur. This is 1 in a billion discoveries, found with skin and gut contents intact. August 2019, very recently, isn't it? Scientists hail it as perhaps the best preserved dinosaur specimen ever uncovered. You can't even see its bones because it's covered by mummified tissue, skin, and so forth. Wow. That's because 110 million years later, those bones remain covered by the creature's intact skin and armor, end quote. So this is an evolutionist talking about 110 million years. The dinosaur is so well preserved that it may have taken to calling it not a fossil, but an honest-to-goodness dinosaur mummy. A dinosaur, who would have ever guessed? I was shocked when they found soft dinosaur tissue 20 years ago, but now, do you want to see what it looks like? Let's take a look. Right there. You can't even see the bones. Why? The tissue is still there. Intact tissue, the skin, and all that is still right there on this dinosaur mummy. That's the only problem is they attach a very, very old age to it. 110 million years old. Forget it. Forget it. That is just not going to happen. However, we would look at this and say, what? What better evidence do we have of a recent flood? a recent flood that would preserve this thing so quickly. I believe this could last thousands of years. The flood was 4,500 years ago. The flood lasted 1 year. I believe that this is exactly what we would expect to find, not regularly, but we're not surprised to see it because we live on a young earth. An earth that was absolutely inundated and covered with water 4,500 years ago. Well, the Hebrew word tannin is usually translated as monster or dragon. And in 1842, the English anatomist Sir Richard Owen coined the term dinosaur. That's why you don't see the word dinosaur in the King James Version of the Bible. The word dinosaur wasn't put together until after the King James Version of the Bible was published, many years afterwards. And so you do see words like tannin, and you see Leviathan in the Bible. You see flying serpent in the Bible, Isaiah chapter 30. You see dragons, for example, Isaiah chapter 34. Could these not be, and we're just making a suggestion, folks, nothing more than a suggestion, could these not possibly be plesiosaurs, pterodactyls, and dinosaurs? Pterodactyl, P is in pterodactyl. It was a joke. Thank you. But pterodactyls are what we call flying reptiles, not flying dinosaurs. No such thing as flying dinosaurs. But they are flying reptiles, okay? Flying reptiles. How about swimming dinosaurs? No such thing as swimming dinosaurs. No, they are swimming reptiles. Swimming reptiles. And so, we would say swimming reptiles or flying reptiles, but not dinosaurs. Behemoth. I saved the best until last. Behemoth. This is discussed in Job chapter 40. And he says there, right down there at the base, it said, he moveth his tail like a what? Like a cedar trees, the cedars of Lebanon. In other words, the biblical writer, if he wants to get across that this is very significant, he'll say something like a cedar. Whoa, big tree. And so, unfortunately, some of the Bible commentators, and if you look at and they make references there when you read Job 40, they say Job is looking at a elephant or a hippopotamus. And I disagree because, when you go to the zoo, you look at the tail of an elephant or hippopotamus, and it's just like a cedar tree. I mean, it's just huge. It just hangs down from the... No. As a matter of fact, the tail of both a hippopotamus and an elephant is like a fly swatter, right? You look at it, it's just a... And how could the writer of Job get it so right about describing this creature and get it so wrong about a very significant part of the anatomy, the tail? Now, is this proof that Job was looking at for example, I believe he was looking at a sauropod, long neck and a long tail. I can't prove this, of course, but I think this is evidence. This is compelling evidence. And so I think that here in Job chapter 40, the prophet is describing a sauropod. Fact number 4, dinosaurs were killed and buried by the flood about 4,500 years ago. Some would say 43, 55, somewhere around there, depending on what calendar you use, the Jewish calendar, Hebrew, But anyway, it was not an asteroid. One of the saddest things I can say this afternoon is I've been asked to speak many times in Christian schools, Christian high schools, Christian grade schools, and when I ask the rhetorical question, what killed the dinosaurs? Their answer immediately is, unfortunately, the evolutionary party line. They say a giant asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula and set up a huge shock wave of material that killed the dinosaurs. That's not what the Bible says. But there is a glimmer of good news when the evolutionists say that. When the evolutionists talk about what killed the dinosaurs and they describe this meteorite striking the Yucatan Peninsula, they're on the right track. You know why? Because they're talking about a worldwide catastrophe. What was the Genesis flood? A worldwide catastrophe. All of a sudden now, evolutionists are right up alongside the creationists saying, yeah, a worldwide catastrophe. And I'm going, bingo. Yeah, there was a worldwide catastrophe. They talk about one millions of years ago, 66 million years ago. We talk about a worldwide catastrophe 4,500 years ago. And by the way, their worldwide catastrophe was a catastrophe with a vengeance. Okay? I mean, it must have been, the way they describe it must have been incredible. Now, we believe there may have been asteroid activity during the Genesis flood. We're not sure. We can't go back in time and observe it. But the point that the evolutionists are admitting there was a worldwide catastrophe, whereas 50 years ago they were laughing at us for believing in a flood, now they're agreeing with us, at least in the point that it was a worldwide catastrophe. All right, here's my friend again, Michael Benton out of England. He's a vertebrate paleontologist, no friend of the creationists. He said in 2015, quote, over the years, more than 100 hypotheses, that is, suggestions, ideas, have been presented for the extinction of the dinosaurs. I love it. 100 hypotheses. 100 of them. Boy, you ought to read some of these suggestions. They're real whoppers. They really are. But what is missing? What is missing? Every possible extinction scenario for the dinosaurs except for one. Anybody, it's just us here. Anybody want to guess what that one extinction scenario they don't talk about? A flood. A flood, which is the most obvious, by the way. Because where do we find dinosaurs buried? We find them buried in sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock is rock laid down by running water, like you would get with a flood. Yeah, a flood could do something like that. The most common sedimentary rockers is sandstone, limestone, and shale. Sandstone, limestone, shale. Sounds like a law firm. But anyway, those are the sedimentary rocks, and this is where we find the dinosaurs, and yet out of the 100 scenarios, they never mention the flood. Why is that? It's because they have a bias. They don't want to talk about the flood, even though the flood is the most obvious, in-your-face explanation for the extinction dinosaur. This is taken from weather satellite 22,000 miles out in space, showing that there's plenty of water for a flood, okay? Anybody know what the average depth of the ocean is today? The average depth? 2.5 miles. Very good. Somebody said 2 miles. 2.5 miles. 2.5 miles. That's the average depth of the ocean. Do you suppose that's enough water for the flood? Yeah, I'm a scuba diver. I love to scuba dive. Haven't in years, but it's always fun doing that. Look at that little Hawaii right there. Oh no, they're up there. This is Hawaii. Who said Hawaii's here? It's up there. Okay. Here's another picture, same satellite, 22,000 miles out in space, just showing how much water is, and what's the nickname of this planet? The water planet, right? What percentage of this planet is covered with water? About 73%. I'm starting a one-man campaign to rename this planet's name. Instead of Earth, we should call it water. Okay, so help me out. Let's change the name of planet Earth to planet water. Okay. This is an illustration museum displaying how dinosaurs died in a watery catastrophe. This comes from the Dinosaur Provincial Park in Canada. This is their phrase right here, watery catastrophe. Well, anyway. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered, as it says in Genesis. And this is another picture from Canada. It's a different publication. If I talked to an artist and I said, I want you to show me, and the artist is a Christian, a creationist, I want you to show me how maybe the beginnings of the Genesis flood were, and include dinosaurs, she or he would include something like this. And this is not done by a creationist. This is an evolutionary publication, but I'm going, wow. As we say in the old country, bingo. This is exactly what we would say in terms of the creation model. Canadian Geographic, year 2014. Many believe that large flooding swept up the dinosaurs, causing their deaths. Boy, I couldn't think of a better explanation that supports a Genesis flood.
Just a quick question. We just visited the Mammoth site in Hot Springs, South Dakota.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs slipped in here, and that's why they're preserved. I mean, is that just another example of
yeah. You know, and again, yeah, I don't want to be negative or make fun of anybody, but I mean, this is what you see all the time. And, let's go where the evidence leads, okay? And so, yeah, they're talking about large flooding swept up the dinosaurs, causing their deaths and, falling into some kind of aquatic type Sounds like a flood. It really does. I mean, look at that. Doesn't that look like the results of a watery cataclysm? Again, I mentioned the type of sedimentary rock, sandstone, limestone, and shale. And here we find dinosaur fossils. And in zoology, we call it disarticulated. Big word, disarticulated. That just means twisted, broken up. Just like you'd get in a flood. Yeah, a flood could do something like that, okay? And so these creatures are disarticulated. They're broken up due to the Genesis floodwater. Everybody knows running water can be highly, highly destructive, right? I mean highly destructive. There's nothing, it seems, that can survive a floodwater once it gets going. Even secular scientists are openly talking about a global catastrophe 66 million years ago. That's what I just alluded to. And since that quote is, well, that was way back 2 years ago, now evolutionists are also talking about the fact that this planet was covered with water in the past. That's what they're saying. They're saying that not because the Bible says so, but because the physical evidence shows that the planet was covered with water in the past. 100%. And so they try and do, they're going, well, it looks like it's covered with water, but we don't believe the Bible, so we'll say it was covered with water millions of years ago. And I had a debate on the radio, use the phone, just radio debate with an evolutionist, and I was pointing that out, that yes, evolutionists are now agreeing with creationists that this planet suffered a worldwide catastrophe. Then I went on to say, evolutionists are now agreeing with the creationists that this planet was covered with water in the past. And this guy was beside himself with rage. He said, yes, but it was X number of millions of years ago. And I'm saying, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just getting you to admit that this planet was covered with water in the past. Yes or no? And he finally said yes, but and he started talking about these millions of years. And I'm going, no, you're agreeing now with the creationist that this planet was covered with water in the past. That's all I want you to understand. Now they're also agreeing that this planet suffered a worldwide catastrophe. So fact number 5, we got to move on. Dinosaurs never turned into birds. I mean, this seems so obvious, okay? Dinosaurs have always been, birds have always been, people have always been. Yeah, there you go. And so dinosaurs never turned into birds. This is dinosaur skin. How do they get dinosaur skin? Well, muds, sediments from something like a flood could move up against the carcass of a dinosaur and get an imprint, okay? And so you get all this watery sludge going up against the dinosaur carcass, and then it solidifies, and you can get the pebbled texture that you see there in the various dinosaur representations, different places of the world, but they show the clear imprint of dinosaur skin. Unfortunately, evolutionists are saying dinosaurs turned into birds, okay? So what's the question we should ask? Where are the feathers? Very good. Where are the feathers? Okay? And, dinosaur skin is a pebbled, unique texture to dinosaurs without feathers. So here's a theropod dinosaur. The theropods are what the Tyrannosaurus rex is. And look at that long, heavy tail. I never say theropod dinosaurs without also including a long, heavy tail, because that's what theropod dinosaurs are all about. And can you see how something like this turned into a hummingbird? Okay, but evolutionists say time plus beneficial mutations, that's almost an oxymoron. I've never heard a compelling beneficial mutation. But they say vast periods of time plus beneficial mutations turned this heavy-tailed theropod dinosaur into this. Wait, what's this? Anybody? This is a bee hummingbird of Cuba. A bee hummingbird of Cuba. How small is a bee hummingbird of Cuba? I'm glad you asked. The mama hummingbird can make her nest inside of a hollowed-out golf ball. So the bee hummingbird of Cuba is one of the smallest vertebrates in the world. And I have a whole presentation just on hummingbirds. It's a 50-minute presentation where we look at we look at hummingbird feeding, flight, everything about it. Hummingbirds are absolutely amazing creatures. They have 9 air sacs and all that. But here is a hummingbird, a bee hummingbird of Cuba, and sitting on the end of an eraser. Kind of hard to say how this turned into this. But evolutionists are calling this, the bee hummingbird of Cuba, a dinosaur. See, that's Orwellian. George Orwell would say something like that. Okay. The smallest dinosaur is the bee hummingbird, says the American Museum of Natural History in 1995. And this is Norell and his fellow authors, 1995. The smallest dinosaur is the bee hummingbird. Well, just because you're going to start calling that doesn't mean that one evolved into the other. Not at all. Note, a number of evolutionists disagree, and then they say birds came from thecodonts, which are primitive archosaurs, and I won't get into that. But sometimes evolutionists will try and corner me on that, and so I've included this because not all evolutionists are saying theropod dinosaurs. Some are saying the thecodonts. Okay, feathers have always been what? Feathers, okay. What is this, class? Scales. These are scales like you'd see on a snake or something like that. Obviously, this is a feather. In addition, theropod dinosaurs arise too late to give rise to birds, and complex bird respiratory system could not evolve from the simple heavy-tailed theropod lungs. Bird respiratory system, I used to teach it in my zoology class. Nothing simple about a bird respiratory system. They have 9 air sacs, and they have pneumatic bones that are hollow. Years ago, a zoologist, ornithologist they teach a swan to smoke. They teach a swan to smoke. And then, in the name of science, they would cut off one wing of the swan, but it still needs a cigarette. Look, you cut off my wing, just give me a cigarette. And the swan would inhale the cigarette smoke, and the smoke would trickle out of the hollow bones every time it inhaled. Out of the hollow bones here, because the bones of a bird, the hollow bones, are intimately connected with the 9 air sacs and the lungs, and something we call in zoology parabronchi, and it gets very, very complex. But it's very, very sophisticated. Also, birds can do 2 different songs at once, right? Something called the syrinx. Have you ever heard the syrinx? It's a voice box of a bird, the syrinx. It's what gives it its melodious nature and all that. Well, the creators designed the syrinx where the bird can give 2 different sounds at the same time. It all has to do with the respiratory system. It's utterly amazing. By the way, in the fossil record, we have found fossils of birds. Syrinx has always been, this voice box has always been a syrinx, always. And I've written an article about that for ICR. But so we, in other words, folks, we still don't understand the bird respiratory system completely. We know a lot of interesting things about it, but we still don't understand how birds actually breathe, except that they do. God designed birds to preen their feathers. All these are examples right here, birds preening their feathers, right? Simply put, birds their life depends on preening. The life of a bird depends on its ability to preen its feathers, that is, to clean its feathers, to keep the feathers oiled and so forth. That's why they spend approximately 1/3 of their time preening their feathers, 1/3, making sure that the feathers are absolutely in tip-top shape because, as I say, their lives depend on it. Feathers have always been feathers. No compelling evidence of how a feather came from a scale. You got scales, you got feathers, and that's it. So how could I can't say that without laughing. How could dinosaurs preen their feathers without a beak? Do you see how these mouth parts of a dinosaur don't look anything like the beaks of a bird? Okay, so if dinosaurs began to, make feathers, then how does the dinosaur get around and start, my feathers need to be preened? I mean, it doesn't have the mouth parts for it. And so that's a big problem. And so within the space of only about a couple of weeks, if dinosaurs ever had feathers, those feathers would be smashed and just destroyed, basically. Destroyed in just a couple of weeks because dinosaurs do not have the mouth parts to preen feathers. That's just not part of their construct. Dinosaur-killing asteroid triggered a global tsunami that scoured the seafloor thousands of miles from the impact site. And so I'm at the end of my presentation here, but I just wanted to show you, and I wanted to include this particular slide earlier when we talked about the giant asteroid that supposedly struck the Earth. And so this is proof, I think, or at least very good indication that evolutionists do believe in a worldwide catastrophe with a vengeance. okay? And so all of a sudden now, we're not so unscientific when we talk about the Genesis flood covering the world and destroying life as we know it. And so the evolutionists are finally kind of coming around to that. So that's all I have. Pastor, as you want to go ahead and come up, please avail yourself to getting these books for both the grown-ups and the kids, especially the kids' book here, that we have a book on dinosaurs, and get them started in the right direction. And Pastor, I'll turn it over to you. Yes.